And welcome to this week's edition of Just Sports. Along with Tommy Dalk, I'm Brad Hallier, and Tommy, it's a little shorter staff today, aren't we? I mean,
it's a little lonely.
Yeah, a little lonely in here. I mean, with all due respect to you, Kristen. I mean, we're happy that you're in here, but now that Pat's not around, I guess he's too. We should have him on a cameo or something like that, like having him come up one day like unexpectedly and join us or something. Get our ratings back into the 50s instead of the 30s, like I'm sure they'll be after this episode.
Dear God, that's Pat's music. What's he doing?
Well, high school basketball is now underway, but obviously the big story last week was the resignation of Hutchinson High football coach Randy Dreiling. He is heading off to Johnson County to coach St. Thomas Aquinas starting next year. After 17 years, 160 wins, 9 state championship game appearances, and 7 state titles, Dreiling is off. And Tommy, you didn't get a chance to really get to know Randy at all, since being only here 2 months. But as you elegantly wrote in your column on Friday, you understood what he meant to this community. Tell me a little bit about the cable guy you wrote about. You mentioned your cable guy hooker up or whatever was talking about Dreiling.
Yeah, it was just one of those where kind of the awkwardly waiting and stuff. He's just like, "Oh, work for the paper. You're gonna cover Dreiling?"
No.
And then it was just like one of those like Dreiling. Then he just went off, talked about what a great coach he is. And then he said, I thought kind of interesting, I didn't put it in, but he just said, all the high schools here try to imitate his offense, but they just can't.
What's kind of funny about what's funny about that is actually the two that come to mind about the two who run two former Dreiling assistants who moved on, Dustin Delaney, now Shawnee Mission East. Well, he only took his team to the state championship game for the first time ever this year. Then he got Inman's Mike Vernon, who took over just what was a terrible Inman football program. I think they won 10 games in the 7 years before he got there. He runs the same offense, and they've won 12 games in his 2 years. So I don't know. Maybe I should give this guy a call. Maybe we can have him on the show. He can.
Oh, he would. He's a good guy.
Yeah, he can explain what he was talking about.
He's an Oklahoma fan too. We won't
hold that against him though. But it will. And now all eyes will be turned into who they hire. And I know that you don't know too much about the coaches around the state, but pretty much
Mac Brown's available.
Mac Brown is available, but pretty much every I think high school coach in the state has been mentioned as a possible candidate. And I saw some outlandish names like Holton's Brooks Barta. No, folks, let's just get that name out of the way now. He's not coming. But a couple intriguing ones included Bueller's Steve Warner, who I believe is a Hutchinson High grad, although I still think that one would be kind of a long shot. But if I can put out my personal preference
like the
here.
Texas of high school football, that they'll just be able to get who they want. They've got their wish list out there.
Well, maybe they can offer Nick Saban a good contract. I don't know, but it will be interesting in who they decide to go after because, when Dreiling took over the program before the '97 season, there's actually, I remember him talking about a couple people told him, don't do it. This is career suicide for you. You cannot win at Hutchinson. And now you're going to get inquiries from all across the country. And if I had my personal preference, I'd like to see them give Hayes' Ryan Cornelison a pretty good look. Comes from a good line of football coaches. Actually, football coach. His dad had coached a Liberal dynasty in the '90s, and he's done well at lacrosse and Hayes now. And I think he'd be a pretty good fit here. So it'd be interesting to see how what they do with hiring the coach here. And I'm guessing within the next month. Well, I still haven't been out. I went out to my first high school game last week, but Tommy, tell us a little bit about the week you had. You got to go down to see Tommy went down to the Hutch Mays game on Friday. I've never seen anybody so disappointed. He was like a 10-year-old kid on Christmas morning thinking he was going to get the new iPad Mini and he gets a Kindle instead. Tell me about your disappointment from going to the Hutch Mays game on Friday.
I thought my boy Chase was going to do it.
Chase White was not playing basketball, and you were so disappointed with that.
I thought he was. For some reason, I thought he was.
Yeah, I thought he played basketball too.
It was kind of like the Charlie Brown walk when I came back to the office.
Well, tell us a little bit about. Let's start with the girls' game. May is obviously one of the better teams in the state, and
they were good.
Yeah, and Hutchinson just lost some good players. I'm guessing they just didn't have the horses to keep up with Mays.
Except they actually did surprisingly compete. With as good as Mays looked, and you can just Mays passes the eye test. They're a good basketball team.
Yeah, they're a state championship caliber team.
But Hutch was gritty though. They hung with them. They handled their press too, just because Mays they're just long, athletic. They press all over the place, but Hutch was able to survive it a little bit.
Is this
it never got horribly out of hand? You're just kind of waiting. Oh, they'll get tired. They're more talented, pressing all over, but it just never happened.
from what you saw from that one game, is Hutchinson going to have a hard time scoring this year?
He said that Casey was saying that's kind of the next thing that he has to do because he spent a lot of fall trying to, the early part of practice is just getting them to buy into defense.
Which they did very well.
Yeah.
I mean, Mays didn't even get 50 points, so they did something right on
Yeah,
Friday.
held them to 40 something.
I think it was 48-29, or yeah. Well,
Yeah, and it was one of those where they scored 70 points the game before Hutch too. So that's pretty big achievement just right there.
Yeah,
So
the boys game. Tell me a little bit about that one. Other than your disappointment of Chase not playing, Hutchinson lost quite a bit from last year, and of course Colby Turner's not playing right now. Turner Wentz is not playing. What's the makeup of this Hutchinson team looking like?
Yeah, and they kind of Henry said that they just played too aggressively on defense. They fouled a lot. Then a lot of at the end, whenever they kind of got close, that they just made free throws. Like handed to Mays, when it was on the line, they made free throws. But Hutch, seems like they were actually they had some offensive problems as well, but like they still grinded.
Well, Tommy, you're going to be heading down to Haven tonight, or Tuesday night, taking that doubleheader, and you'll be seeing the Hutch Derby game on Friday. That should be a couple interesting games down there. I will be tonight actually will be my first Hutchinson High game, my first actually high school game of the year. So I'm looking forward to those games against campus, see how they compare.
I thought you went last week, didn't you?
Well, actually, I was thinking about that, and actually I did not because I went to the JUCO game on Friday.
Oh, okay.
And
it was on the schedule. So
yeah, this will actually be my first, essentially the third week of high school basketball, and this is the first one. I did see some wrestling last week, though.
We got such a big staff that usually we
I
don't
know.
need you to do
Yeah,
that,
I don't need to go out to games because we got the rest of it covered. But at any rate, and Friday over at Buhler, I'll be going over there. They're having their big Hall of Fame introduction with the 77 state championship volleyball team. So that'll be always good to see the Buhler Athletic Hall of Fame add some more inductees. And Tommy, you've seen some HEC basketball this year, and I had a couple good games to see last weekend with the men. The first one, they beat Northeast Nebraska, and then Saturday, Kadeem Allen. You've seen him play a couple times this year. He hit the 30-point mark for the 8th time this year already in 15 games. So he's scoring 30 points in a game more than he's not. And he hit the game-winning shot with 1.5 seconds left to beat a very good Hill College team by 1. So I can't remember what your comparison was, but when you saw Kadeem Allen play, I know you're a big NBA guy. Who did you say he reminded you of?
Mainly, I wonder if it's just because he's going to Arizona, but he reminds me of Gilbert Arenas before the knee injuries. Like combo guard who obviously can score. That's who he really reminds me of. And also, he's just not this black hole scorer either. Not like he's chucking up 35 shots, scoring 30 points on 35 shots.
Yeah, he gets to the foul line a lot. He creates a lot of close shots. I mean, and it was kind of, what the interesting part about that last second shot was Hill hit a three-pointer with about 6 seconds left to go up by 1. And more often than not, someone will take timeout right there.
Yeah.
And no timeout was called, and Kadeem Allen just raced down the floor and tossed in the shot. And I asked Coach Steve Eck about it afterwards, and he's like, sometimes the best coaching is no coaching at all. So he figured he just might as well just shut his mouth and let his best player in. At this point, it's reasonable to think that Kadeem Allen might be the NJCAA National Player of the Year with the way he's playing right now. And I know the Arizona fans are starting to take note, starting to retweet the Kadeem Allen tweets, and so definitely some good vibes coming out of Kadeem Allen. The HEC women remained undefeated, ranked number 3. One of these days I think I'm going to see a close game of theirs. I thought, our photographer Lindsey Bauman comes up to me on Saturday. She's like, "Is this going to be another blowout?" And I was like, "No, I think Independence can hang with them. This could be a 15, 20-point game." No, it was a 30-point game, so they're just.
Well, I mean, you're saying 15 to 20 points would be a close game for.
Well,
For
John Onchus's team, yeah. I mean, although Travis Kirk, we just don't know, do we? But they're still undefeated, and they will be undefeated going down to their post-New Year's trip to Arizona, where they will probably get a test with Mesa, the preseason number 1 team in Division II. So, and we all, at this point, we'll probably have to wrap up the show since really not with just the two of us here. There's really not a third person to, unless Kristen behind there wants to add something. No, she doesn't really have anything to add. So
Silent Bob.
Yeah. This will be our last show until after the new year, so enjoy.
No Christmas special?
No Christmas special, unless you want to come in on Christmas Eve. You want to come in on Christmas Eve and
Should I just can I do it Christmas Day just by myself? Just be like the most depressing sports that's
You'd be
ever
like
happened.
that, like in Wayne's World when Wayne left the show and Garth was left to do it by himself. You'd just be sitting there in sheer terror by yourself. But no, we'll take a couple weeks off from Just Sports, and we'll see you guys back here in early January.